So yeah, like I said, I mean, I think I do it on Zoom so I can record it and repost it and reshare the information. But what's going on, sir? How you feeling?
I'm good, man. How y'all doing?
Hey, y'all here, man. It's
good.
So you live in Maryland or you still live in Pittsburgh?
I do. I live in Maryland. Born and raised in Pittsburgh. I've been living in Maryland for about
Pittsburgh people,
years.
always good.
Oh man, my wife is from Pittsburgh.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm born and raised 1972, so I've seen all the glory.
Okay, there you go. What part of Pittsburgh?
Really in Oakland and McKeesport.
Oakland and McKeesport. Okay, I was in the.
My wife is from
Penn Hills, Homewood area.
Oh, Penn Hills.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you said Penn Hills. That's the high school name too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Penn Hills High School. Yep.
Yeah. My wife lived down the road from that. She lived in Churchill or something like that. If I got it
Churchill,
right.
yeah, Churchill.
Yeah. Okay, so I am right. Okay.
There you
go. Yeah. So because a lot of football players came from that school.
A lot, yeah. It's Pittsburgh is a big football.
All their dice, it's a little conglomerate of little pockets.
Yeah.
Correct.
My uncles made fun of me because the guy that my wife dated, not him, but she did go to the prom or homecoming with one guy. But anyway, he made it to the NFL. He played for the Colts for a few years. So my uncles, they like to crack jokes like, you married him and not that other guy? You know what I mean? That's in the NFL. I'm like, thanks.
Let it go, yeah. I was supposed to be Terry Bradshaw when at the age of 12, because again, when you grow up in Pittsburgh, everybody plays football. I played
everyone.
I literally played. I was the MVP 3 years running. I was the quarterback, and I loved it. And I just knew that I was going to be the next Terry Bradshaw until we had to talk. And then I cried for like 3 weeks, and then got over it, and worked my way through.
Right. The story of a lot of people from Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but I lived all over the country. I lived in Hawaii before I moved back to the East Coast, and it's a large Pittsburgh fan base in Hawaii. So,
wow.
So yeah, I mean, there's Steeler bars everywhere, and it's like amazing when you do the Pro Bowl there. It's a sea of black and gold. Like I felt like I was home. There's just so many of us. Like, it was unbelievable. I was like, why did y'all pick us? And they're like, we just like y'all. I was like, that is so amazing. Like, out of all the states, why did you pick? They're like, we just like you so much. I was like, that's awesome to hear. Great.
That's amazing.
Hey, Kamil, can you change your screen name, please? Yeah, I don't really know how to. It's my third time using Zoom. I'm not that proficient just yet.
Are you on a laptop?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You might tap on the three dots, see what comes up. Since you're the host, see what comes up. Is there an option to change his name? Or if you go to participants and
Oh yeah, I can read you. I got it.
Okay. You might be able to, Are you're able to see it where you can change his name?
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you.
By the way, guys, regarding Pittsburgh, the first time I've been exposed to that many steep hills. In Pittsburgh.
Welcome.
It's like this.
Yeah,
like, what in the world?
45 degree. My grandmother lived on a 68 degree.
I'm like, geez.
And brick streets, all brick.
Yeah.
All right. So, so Pedro, how do we get the four of us to be the prominent images?
Video here.
Let me see. I'm not a strong expert. I know a couple tricks. Like that was one of them. That was one. I know how to make one person the spotlight, but I do not know how to make a select.
Oh, you know what? So Kamil, are you on here? I see your name, but are you at your computer?
Well, I'll say one thing that might help. Well, I don't know if this will be the solution, but for everybody that's not speaking, mute everybody else.
Right. So I see here, it says hide non-video participants. So
okay.
I will do that. What's up, Kamil? All right, let me see. Participants. Participants. there you go. Hide non-video participants. So that worked. All right, everybody. See, it's only it's 9:04. I guess we give it just the just like 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we can go ahead and get started. So yeah, learn something new. Now I got to learn how to pin post on Instagram Live. I don't know how to pin post on that yet. I got to figure that part out. I think I'm gonna Google it. You know, but so I'll just start this, right? So the same thing that I told my last guest, right, is the reason why I do these interviews now all of a sudden is not because I'm trying to start a podcast, you know. So mainly, I put a question out just on social media, right? Like what can we do about the the violence in the city, in particular, and I didn't really get a lot of responses, like immediate action. But what I do know is that there are a ton of organizations that they're putting in work for the long term, but there's really nothing right now. And I think that the economic thing, like when this cat Corey from Bada Hood, he put a post out that said every problem that you think is social is really an economic problem, right? So what I want to start doing is just sharing information, sharing opportunities that people might not get normally, and making it readily available. And so all of these, I'm never going to put a paywall or nothing, any of my content, and I'm going to just keep bringing stuff back, And one of the things that I thought about on Friday is to do like a 1,000 job challenge, right? Where I'm gonna try to help 1,000 people in the city, get jobs, to help people get out of survival mode, so they don't have to take the same risk, and so do some of the things that they're doing just to eat, right? And so this right here is it's an extension of that, but what you guys are doing is way next level versus just get a job, right? And I think that we need to share these experiences, these opportunities to, like I said, to show people that there's other ways out here to make it. And even people in a regular 9 to 5, show them that it's a way that they can invest and make money beyond the 9 to 5, to really solidify their family structure and to really grow and build that wealth. And one last thing, there's a lot of people are working on, they're doing stuff for entrepreneurs, right? And they're doing stuff for self-employed, but we need people working to support those entrepreneurs, right? And support what you guys are doing. So people have to make more money, right? To pour into your cups, right? And pour in your pots, and then so you can have more job opportunities. So that's the gist, that's the purpose, that's the reason why I decided to start doing these interviews. And plus I learned from it too. I learned a lot, from talking to people. And I have a lot of really good conversations, but it's just on the phone or just between me and an individual. So now I'm like, okay, let me have some of these conversations and make them more readily available, right? So I don't want this to be stuffy. I want this to just be, us talking, and hopefully, we can get some questions that people will have them, later. And if I figure out, all right, let me see. Hey, Casper, I am going to turn your video off. All right, I don't know how to, if you could do it for me, I'd appreciate it. So I got to figure it out. Cool. So, so any rate, that's it. So without further ado, thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. I've been talking to Kamil all my life, so I know what he does, but but you two, Pedro and Davonne, I'm really interested, in what you guys are doing. Let me see if I can. All right, really interested in what you guys are doing. So listen, Davonne, I guess he'll come back in. in a minute. So I guess Kamil, if you could do a quick intro, please.
Name is Kamil Salter. Currently a Liberty Tax franchisee. Just finished my 11th tax season, or our 11th tax season. It's a team of us now. 5 stores in Philadelphia. First store opened in right during the financial crisis, January 2009. And it's been a great experience. You know, it was a business where I thought I would just cut a check and money would start rolling in, but cutting the check was just the first part. I mean, the work started once the check went out, and still been learning, still growing, still figuring stuff out, but it's been a great experience.
I appreciate it. And Davonne, I didn't know we were doing drink champs. I'd have bought something myself. But
Nah, this is a glass of water.
All right, you want to do you could do an intro. That's not be short. You could just like really introduce who you are, please.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Davonne Austin. With Outback, I'm a proprietor with Outback. I've been a proprietor with Outback for going on 5 years now. We talked about earlier, born and raised in the Pittsburgh area. Now I'm living in the DMV area, about 10 minutes outside of the DC area. I have a restaurant in the Oxon Hill, Maryland area. I've been lucky to take over a struggling restaurant and turn it to, we're competing for that number 1, number 2 busiest store in the company right now, which has been a great opportunity. I started off as a proprietor at the age of 22, was the youngest in the company, especially as a young Black male. It was something big for myself. So that's what I'm doing now. Doing a lot of development, a lot of things in the community as well. Now jumping into the real estate thing as well, as far as opening up that financial portfolio. So just doing some things like that.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. And no, I saw you did the delivery to the funeral of that kid that got slain. It was a sad situation, but I'm glad you were able to participate and make a sad situation a little bit easier for the parents. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Pedro.
Yeah. What's up, everyone? My name is Pedro Moore. I'm a venture capitalist. Started a couple of businesses here in Delaware. Bought the first co-worker space to Delaware back in 2009. I have a bubble soccer company too that started back in 2015. I also am a venture advisor to some other investors. There's a seed fund here in Delaware that I help. And also I advise for Damon John on Shark Tank. You know, basically any deal he says yes to on the show, he sends to me for me to check out. And I also working on a startup project as well, which is Fund and Fuel, fractional investing in franchises as a way to help democratize wealth building for everybody, basically. And then lastly, I am building a small group of people where we're trying to figure out how to kind of open up the portfolio too, to basically try to acquire companies. That's just more my speed, but basically that's what we like to get our hands dirty in.
All right. So now you are more in acquiring. So there's 3 different paths here, right? So you're in the more acquiring company, VC. I know Kamil, and you built your businesses from scratch. You didn't buy any of those, did you? You built them all, correct?
No, I didn't. Well, my last one, it was an existing business, but it wasn't Liberty Tax Store. It was like another tax franchise. But out of the 4 of them, I built from scratch. You built.
And so, and Davonne, you want to share like that path in becoming a proprietor?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it was one of those more so stories starting off at the ground, working my way up. Got hired at an Outback as a host at age 17. This was kind of when I just moved to the Maryland area. Was looking for a job, got in there as a host, and just worked my way around, honestly. I had a gentleman by the name of Todd Lucas. He was actually a proprietor. I had no clue what a proprietor was. Caucasian gentleman took me under his wing, seeing something in me that I didn't even see in myself. A weekend with me working in Outback, he was like, I'm gonna bring you to be a partner one day, a proprietor. And I was just like, this guy's crazy. What are you talking about, a proprietor? And teaching me everything from the business to the financials to the food costs to the waste to just the the TCI numbers with the business to how to tie a tie, how to be a little more articulate and carry myself like a business owner. So went from there, worked through the management rankings. An opportunity came up for me to then actually get a store. Once you get a store with Outback, it's not so much as a general manager or proprietor, so you actually buy into a store. So once a store becomes available in your area, if you are qualified for it, you have the opportunity to take that store on, which is putting a certain amount of money down on a store, which is a 5-year contract period. Now you can renew your period and go from there and things like that. Which I'm on my first period now. I took over a store more of an urban community, a city store. It was a store in the hood, to be more clear. It was one of those stores that no one wanted. No one wanted. It was a cash cow, but they had security guards, they had fights, they had certain things that wasn't at the other Outbacks on the other side of town, and I ran to it immediately. Did things that were out of my comfort zone. This is at the age of 22. And from there, I turned this underperforming store into one of the top performing stores in the company. And then from there, I got the opportunity to take on a bigger beast, which I invested some money into, and it's an Outback in Oxon Hill, Maryland. So I guess just given like number wise to when I say bigger beast, the store that I had, it was a $4.5 million store. So that's what it was making a year, which is considered pretty high volume. Then the store that I took on was a $6 million store, which I'm taking on now, which is considered extreme high volume. But it was another store. It was in the DC area, security guards, fights, things like that. And I ran in there. I had the store for a year, and now it's the second busiest store in the company. We cleaned it up, and that's how I got my name in this game with Outback.
I appreciate that. Now, so you started with the first one, right? And so, as a proprietor, you just jump over to the other one, or you still have both, or do you sell your stake in the first one? How does that work?
So basically, what I did was actually my stake with that store, it actually just transferred over to the other one. I actually had to put a little more into this one due to the volume of it. But the money that I had invested into this first restaurant, it actually just carried on to the other one. And then what went from there was another proprietor came in who invested some money into that one, paid his money basically to Outback, and was able to acquire that restaurant. And from there.
All right. So without that gentleman seeing something in you, then you wouldn't even have had that opportunity to become a proprietor in Outback. Yeah,
I know. Again, he seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. It was I remember when I first went to his house. He was a proprietor, but he drove a 1987 Trailblazer, and this guy was. He was, of course, extremely financially stable, but I went to his house and I met his wife and I said, what does your wife do for a living? He said, my wife is a stay-at-home mom. I'm coming from a single parent mother, working 2-3 jobs. I didn't know what a stay-at-home mother was. I said, a stay-at-home mother, can you explain that to me? He said, she raises the kids, I work. I was blown away. And from there, he introduced me to other things as far as books. Again, is reading dictionaries and working on my vocabulary, reading leadership books, John C. Maxwell. I probably read every single John C. Maxwell book, and just doing little things like that. Again, this is a 17-year-old guy coming from Pittsburgh, coming from the inner cities of Pittsburgh, not knowing anything about the financial business, not knowing anything about the leadership aspect of it, how to run a restaurant, how to control these TCI numbers, your food cost numbers, waste, things like that. How to actually just conduct yourself at a round table in front of your 15 other managers and your 100 employees and things like that. So it was a big opportunity, and he was definitely a huge mentor.
All right. I mean, no, that's a great story, and there's some gems. I hear you say you were willing to work on yourself, right? And also take the criticism, and to get yourself better and put the time in, into reading. So now let me ask you this, Kamil. So when you started, so why'd you even choose Liberty Tax as a franchise to purchase?
At the time when I got started, I was in real estate. I was I guess at the height of the real estate market bubble, I was a real estate agent buying properties, selling properties, but it wasn't really a passion. I guess I did like the opportunity to get a passive income, whatever, but I just got frustrated with trying to get mortgages all the time. I always had my money tied up, so on and so forth. So, I was listening to a lot of Robert Kiyosaki stuff, and he talked about, having a cash machine, and I was like, well, I need a cash machine. I guess that's my missing link, if you will. So I thought, a lot of different things all happened at once. I was, I went to a conference, and a lady had a bunch of Jackson Hewitts, and she was doing a lot of returns up in New York. And I was like, man, I count the numbers. I was like, that sounds like a lot of money. So at the same time, I was listening to a Nas album, and he mentions Reginald Lewis, first black billionaire. And I was like, okay, well, who's this guy? Looked him up, saw that, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? That book was been in my parents' house my whole life. Never looked at it until Nas mentioned it. Got that. Then at the same time, Black Enterprise. I saw Black Enterprise magazine said the top 100 franchises. Sorry, top 25 franchises for under 100,000. I looked through it, saw 3 tax franchises. I reached out to all of them actually, and the first one that got back to me was Liberty Tax. So that's kind of just the first people that got back to me, and the others. I mean, I guess it was just Providence or whatever, because the other 2, like within that next year, one got shut down, and the other one a few years later, the Department of Justice shut them down. So that kind of was how I got in. And I didn't really expect to do taxes. Like my family, where I come from, a family accountant, CPA, so I've been in the tax environment my whole life, but I never did taxes. I just thought it was like stupid, waste of time. Like, why would I be doing this? And then to come full circle and get involved in taxes. And I had to get involved because there was nobody to teach taxes. So literally, I signed my lease December 24th. I had to read the book on how to teach a tax class, run a Craigslist ad. And by January 4th, we had to switch a check cashing office into a tax store and, run a tax school. And that's kind of how it started. I just realized I actually like taxes. It's fun. It's not just numbers. It's more problem solving. So that was the start.
So Pedro, this is where you come in after this question. Now, Davonne, let me ask you this. So how did you actually get the money to put in to become a proprietor in the first store?
Which is a good question as well. A lot of people usually take out loans and things like that to actually get it. I was lucky to come across a family member, someone who believed in me, and I was able to get some private funding from there, which got me into the door, and was able to pay off that debt to that person. But typically, usually, the normal person when getting these stores usually take out a loan, unless they have a situation like I had.
Okay, and then Kamil, how about you? How'd you fund your first store?
A combination of a credit line that I had, and Liberty provided the rest of the financing.
Liberty did, okay. So do you want to say how much that is? Is that okay to say that amount?
At the time, it was I wrote a $15,000 check. Liberty financed the rest, which was $25,000 over a 5-year period. But they, I also had to have money to that. They didn't give me any money to set the place up, so I had to still tap my credit line to get everything needed to actually get the place up and running. But I was fortunate again that it was a Liberty Tax franchisee who was getting out the business, and he basically had his whole store in his basement, like all furniture, supplies, computers, phones, everything for $2,000. I just had to rent a van, take it out to like 2 hours away, pick everything up, bring it back. And so that helped save some of the startup money.
That's a huge number. So now Pedro, right? You heard both of their stories, right? So how does what you do, would it be able to help people from their beginning before they even start? How could you help someone in their positions?
Well, I wouldn't say it depends on where they're starting at. If they are starting with, let me see, if they're starting with really not too much, because they got to have something to work with a little bit, right? So with my project Fund and Fuel, that's something where you got to have something to really work with to be able to do some funding. But generally speaking, let's just say that someone is trying to go down that path. One thing that I've been just kind of advising people is also one thing about general for investing is our risk mitigation for anybody, right? And if someone wants to open up a franchise and they need someone to invest, how do you reduce that risk for them, right? And there's a lot of general basic things that can happen, and this can be applied across any asset class. So one, if you think about the people, the team, does the person have experience? If yes, that helps reduce the risk. If no, it probably increases the risk, but there's other things that can help reduce the risk. I think Davonne mentioned that the place he took over was already existing, even though it was not performing, strongly, but it was already existing. Sometimes that can reduce the risk from a potential investor, right? Because they can see the history. And then for their mindset is, we coming in with a game plan. They understand that it's still risky, but they can, because people are tangible, but they can possibly see what's really happening. Starting from the ground up, I'm not saying it is impossible, but people can still do that. But it's just more of, what's the real game plan to reduce that risk for that investor to make sure they really feel comfortable in terms of raising capital. But a lot of that's going to really come down to you and your character. That's really what a lot of things fall down to. Can you get the job done? Even if you don't have the immediate experience, are you the type of person that can learn to figure it out and to actually get the job done? But I don't know that answers the question or not, but how does someone kind of help? But there's a lot of different ways, I guess, to help someone to get capital. I'll start with that. There's a lot of different creative ways to help get capital for someone to acquire some asset. Does that help a little bit?
It does, but you know what I want to do? I know we mentioned Funding Fuel a couple of times. Do you want to actually expand on what that is?
Yeah, Funding Fuel is a new startup that I'm working on. It came from the concept of venture capital. Venture capital, for lack of better words, use syndication to fund startup companies. I've always been passionate about entrepreneurship. Always been passionate about. I read Kamil, same thing, Rich Dad Poor Dad. So I've always been about economic development for myself and of course people that look like me. But one thing I learned when I got into the venture world is how they fund deals. And they use a basic concept that's been around for eons, which is syndication. And so for those that don't know, think of crowdfunding, think of pulling money together, think of group economics. That is all the same thing. So when we used to invest in a company, let's just say they want to raise $1 million. We wouldn't cut a check of $1 million into that company. We would cut maybe, it depends on our threshold, depends on how much we really like it. But let's just say we will cut it, we like it significantly. We may cut a check of 500, but then another VC fund will come in and do 250, and then another one will come in and do another 250 to get to that total $1 million round. And the reason why they do that is just for syndication. It reduces a little bit of risk. That way, one fund is not fully exposed to that startup, because investing in startups is extremely risky. So and of course crowdfunding became popular because of the law and all that. And so I was thinking about I want to get into a venture that can kind of help build wealth for everybody, but my motivation especially are people. And I was just wondering, how can people invest in something, an asset class that can produce cash flow potentially, and create another additional stream of income. So that's where this came around. And they already have websites that you can invest in tech startups. They already have websites where you can invest in real estate, but no one was really tackling the franchising world. And I figured one thing a couple of years ago, it didn't last long because I had some, issues with some people that don't look like me, if you know what I mean. And so it was an angel community I was trying to build to teach them how to invest in startups. And because one lesson I always say is that, when you invest in a startup, you want to invest in a startup that you can actually impact, and impact meaning that you can add value somehow, right? Either through insight or you can refer customers, et cetera, et cetera. That's your money in there, right? And so I figure with franchising, one way, when we get this program launched, that these people can add value is that they invest in, let's just say it is a Planet Fitness, right? And one way to add value or provide impact to your investment is be a member there, or refer your friends to go to that Planet Fitness, to subscribe there, because that way it helps impact your investment. Because when you invest in the stock market, me, I love Apple. I have stock in Apple, but me buying a little laptop doesn't do too much to their bottom line, right? But I figured, with a franchise or some kind of system like that, that can add value to that impact, to that investment, to potentially get a decent return. So that's where Fund and Fuel kind of came about. It's just kind of taking what I've gained from the venture world and applying it into the world of franchising, just kind of calling it fractional investing in franchising.
Okay, is that open yet?
No, not right now. We're building out the platform, and we have the website's up. It's fundandfuel.com, where people can join to subscribe to the wait list. So that way, when we
got to figure out how to get Black folks to invest there rather than these giving looms and birthday club that's going around right now.
Yeah, and I think it's a mindset shift too, because just speaking about group economics in general, I'm really big. Like, I have a small community here of folks that we all try to figure out what can we do in terms of investing in new things. And my gift is business development. I'm really good at meeting new people, talking, find opportunities to get involved in. And but it's a mindset shift, because a lot of our people, like I know a guy that opened up a trampoline park, launch trampoline park, and he mentioned that how some of he had opportunity. He didn't need their money, but he wanted to bring some of his family in to get some investments, and to allow them to get be partners in this particular business. And a lot of them said no. And then a couple of years later, he ended up having 3 stores and sold them all. And now him and his wife are doing good. But it's I think it definitely have to be a mindset shift.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has to be. So now, Davonne, do you have to work for Outback to become a proprietor?
You don't actually have to work for Outback. No, you can come in from the outside and definitely take over a store for sure. One thing that they do, as for at least, is the experience. But no, you do not have to work for Outback. Now, if you do work for Outback, if you come up in the ranks, there is certain funding through Outback to help you acquire a store. Because the average manager coming up in the ranks can't go ahead and afford one of these stores. So there's definitely better opportunities when you're coming through the company besides an outside hire.
I mean, I know. So when we spoke another day, I mean, you would mention some of the, I guess, financial literacy, issue that you had after you even got the first store. Do you want to kind of expand on some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. It was, it's one of those things that I speak with confidence now, but before, which is one of those things I was like, I want to talk to nobody about this. When I first got my store, like I was telling you, I learned all these other things as far as controlling costs with these stores, controlling my food costs, controlling my labor, controlling my management labor, all these other things that you have to do when running a business, to meet that goal on your bottom line, which in a restaurant business is a 10% TCI. That's basically where you make your money. So I was great with that, but I had no clue how to manage my own money. Again, I got a store at 22. I was blessed to get some success in my life very young, and when I got the store, my first year, at the end of the year, I looked and I ran through everything that I acquired financially from Outback. I had no clue about anything financially as far as saving. I didn't know how to invest money. I didn't know anything about it. I came from again, single parent mother working 2, 3 jobs. We didn't talk about financial literacy inside the house. We didn't read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It took me 24 years to read Rich Dad Poor Dad. It took me 24 years to listen to a financial podcast. It took me to blow through my whole entire yearly finances through Outback to understand, hey, you got a problem. It's not just a problem, you just don't understand it. And I was listening to these podcasts. I was listening to all of these successful people speaking. It's so weird when you listen to these podcasts, there's a trend. A lot of them all read the same books. Like you guys said, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I'm sure you guys watch, podcasts all the time. How many times do we hear, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? I kept saying, man, these guys are reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Why do all these successful people keep talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad? I went on Amazon, I bought Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Then I bought The Richest Man in Babylon. Then I bought The Millionaire Next Door. I bought, all these books. And I said, I got to teach myself this stuff, My mother wasn't going to teach me, So that was huge for me. I bring it up a lot, especially when I'm talking to young, inspiring business owners and things like that. I always tell them, I said, you got this goal in place. You want to do this. You want to open up this hair salon. All right, great. But what about your taxes? Do you understand that? What about saving? What about how you want to invest this money when you get it? How are you with saving now? Can you save $1,000? If you can't save $100, you're not going to be able to save $5,000, whatever case may be. So that was one of the biggest things for me. It was one of those things at the end of the year. I looked at my bank account and I shed some tears. I shed a lot of tears, because I said to myself, if you lose your restaurant today or tomorrow, with the money you have in your account, you're going straight back to Pittsburgh. And you're going back to Pittsburgh with nothing, right? You're going back to Pittsburgh with a story to tell that you were 22 and you got a store and you were doing great things, but you didn't know what to do with your money because you had no clue. And that was one of my biggest wake-up calls, was that. So again, it was me being hungry, me making a lot of mistakes that first year, and just me looking at myself in the mirror and say, you're not going to do this anymore. You're going to educate yourself about finances. You're not going back home to Pittsburgh and being another statistic out of the Pittsburgh city. You're going to figure this thing out. So that's what I did.
Rest in peace, Jimmy Wapo, man. So
yeah, there you
go. so we that's part of the reason why right here. I don't know if you can see this graphic here, but the reason why this is actually a T-shirt that I made, and the reason why I made this shirt is when I'm walking around, most of the time I'm in the hood, right, like the vacant house, whatever, and I just want people to see and maybe subconsciously absorb the words. Because like these are the 4 elements that you really need to build and maintain wealth. Like this Absolutely. Is it. This is that's it, right? So I just wear that shirt. I just want people to see those things where people in the hood, people don't even hear about it. Like I'm just like even myself, right? I thought that I had a really high like financial literacy, and it wasn't until I really started to begin to like plan for the next generation that I realized I don't. I made it to this point and I did pretty okay because of my ability to save money, right? Because I went broke twice and didn't want to go back. So I know how to put money away, right? But if I didn't have like that ability to save, then I really don't know where I would be. I waited till later in life, right, to buy my life insurance. Life insurance is a little more expensive, but I'm blessed to be in a position to where I can pay these, life insurance. I bought it for my kids now, which before I never would even consider buying life insurance for my kids, right? And so, and what that actually is doing for me is planning for the next generation. So, God forbid we got to use it, but we don't have to use it, then my kids will have life insurance they can use or not. And then, their kids have a policy on them. So I'm already planning, just in that one transaction, I'm planning for 2 generations away, right? But once again, these are things that I'm just getting. Now I'm 42, right? And it took me till I'm 41 to really start to get, some of these concepts. And like, that's why it's really important for me to get this information from you guys and what I have and gather and, disseminate it out like throughout the community so people can get it earlier. Like what I did, my nephew, when he turned 16, all these books, I bought him a stack of books for his birthday. I don't think he cracked one open. And I tell him all the time, like, if you don't have financial literacy, it's your fault. You know, it was before, it was our parents' fault, right? They did not give it to us. But at the same time, you know, my mother grew up in rural Virginia, you know, segregated, you know, walking to school, no running water. Like, this is where my mama's from. And so my mom can't teach me about, you know, building wealth. My mom, she can teach me how to get a job, how to keep a job for 30-something years. But as far as everything else, that wasn't her. But now that I have it, I'm passing it on. Like I said, my nephew, when he's 16, and I asked him, you read those books? You read them? So now he does not have an excuse, because I'm not going, if he doesn't seek it out for himself, he's not going to retain it. I don't want to drill into his head. I want him to go ahead and get it. Here's the information, crack a book open, you know, turn the game off, right? And that's it. So now let me ask you this, Davonne, do you have interest in expanding your location?
Yes, definitely. I'm looking at some things outside the restaurant business, actually, to be honest.
Okay.
We're, of course, like I said earlier, you know, definitely some, you know, I acquire some property as far as in the real estate, you know, as far as just some grab and hold some rental properties. But besides that, you know, I got a friend, he's opening up a restaurant business, and it's more so just going in there with him as far as some funding, and not even just the funding part, just some coaching and teaching, you know. I was able to acquire a lot through just being with Outback as far as the financial part of running a restaurant, even though he know how to cook, and, you know, he ran a food truck. You know, it might be a little different once he jumped into the actual getting himself a building and having a dining room, and, you know, how to acquire your liquor license and all this other stuff that comes with running, you know, more of a high volume location where he's at. So teaming up with little things like that, you know, and going from there and looking at other franchises outside of just Outback, you know, and going, you know, going from there. Not too sure which ones I'm looking at right now. Have a friend, he has a Subway, and he's on his 4th Subway. And as far as, you know, Subway, where they're at due to COVID and things like that, they're still strong. They got a strong off-premises dining, which is, you know, the DoorDash and things like that. They're staying above the game. So that's always a smart place to invest when it goes to the food business.
Yeah, I think that this COVID changed everything. I think, Kamil, you said you were able to, so are your numbers the same now? You said, because even though COVID, you're still at the same numbers for your stores?
We actually, this year, we did our most returns ever. You know, it's a new business section now, which is, you know, I guess is going to add more value to certain businesses, and that is essential business. You know, we were branded an essential business. So when other places had to shut down, we were able to stay open. And a lot of tax places necessarily didn't stay open, but we were open. So I don't know if it had, you know, the stimulus and people had to file, be compliant to get their stimulus money. So, I mean, we were, you know, we had our best year. We probably were, it was like 3% more, but still, and that was even with, you know, March wasn't great for us. April wasn't the best, but over our extended tax season, we were able to perform better, just because we were open. And, you know, at this point I have pretty experienced staff now. I mean, you know, my teams, my store leaders all have about 5 or 6 years of tax season experience now. So, I mean, we're able to adapt, you know, and we've had to implement our own systems to be able to communicate, and, you know, teamwork that just has allowed us to really perform really well in adverse situations. So that's kind of where we were.
Now, that's amazing, you know, because my business in real estate, you know, I probably wouldn't even done this conversation, you know, if it wasn't for COVID, because I was in vacant houses, you know, all day. You know, I'll be tired when I come home, and I never really got an opportunity to really think about anything else except the next vacant house that I was going to rehab, right? And so it was always just that. But so this give me some time to like really sit back and look at my overall, you know, business structure and realize, you know, some places where I'm weak and some places where I'm strong. And once again, this is like my personal stress test. You know, it's like, okay, I have enough money to weather the storm, you know, but do I have enough money to continue, right? And so far I'm doing fine. Like my savings haven't even been depleted at all. Like, so I've been, you know, so I've been able to position myself in a way that's okay, but I'm not in a position to thrive. So I think, like you're saying, I really need to look into doing other things to bring in some other revenue, and that, something I might need to think of a business now that might have to be essential, right, for my next stream of income. I was actually looking at. I did an interview with Hood Estates, so I was, thinking about buying a tractor trailer next. We'll be doing some long haul. So we'll see how that business carries out. So now let me ask you this though. So if you guys can you compare what you think your experience was in owning a franchise, and even Pedro, your experience and buying existing businesses, versus starting fresh. Like for instance, like why pay into into a franchise rather than doing your own thing on the side.
Well, I will say this this is just for me, a little bit because of my personality. I started, even though as you do any time you introduce yourself, you say all your good successes, right? I had some bad successes, mostly, trying to start things up. And I'm realizing, a lot of you guys said a lot of things that I'm kind of even realizing myself too. I'm learning my personality, and I'm being exposed to a lot more, and I'm finding my lane that I really like. And I prefer systems when it comes to investing, systems, because I feel like systems reduce risk. I realized that my lane for Pedro Moore is I'm good at making deals. That's where I'm best at. I find people, I can sniff out deals, and I bring everything together. I'm not good at the day-to-day, hustling, bustling type of stuff. I'm good at building relationships, find opportunities. And so with that being said, I like to I'm trying to move myself more into that direction, to do more things. So going back to your question, I'm okay with, because keep in mind, like, at least for franchise, you're paying that royalty as a way to reduce a little bit of your risk, reduce a little bit. And also I will say that whatever path anyone goes, there's no wrong path. It just comes down to your personal risk. Because you could start your own accounting service on the side, but there's pros and cons to that, right? You can go ahead and invest in a system, because part of the benefit of investing in a system, some things you don't have to think about. It's already prepackaged, and of course, because it's prepackaged, there's value. You got to pay a price for that. You can start from the ground up. There's a little bit of risk for that, but but some people might be okay with that. I know for me, my friend and I, we before COVID hit, we were about to close into buying an Auntie Anne's franchise inside of a Walmart. It was already existing, but then COVID hit, and I was a little upset because we would have made. I negotiated like 65% off that deal because it was a motivated seller. She had a health issue and whatever. They already had a staff in there. I was not planning to go in there and do anything. That's just not my strategy. I already had relationships with an owner in Delaware and another owner that had 2 stores in Pennsylvania. So my big picture strategy, close on this one, and then buy the other one from this guy that owned 2, and then come back to Delaware. So my big picture in the next couple of years is to potentially, if we can negotiate a good deal, get 4. But of course, none of that happened. And this also not taught me, but made me realize, especially COVID, in terms of investing, especially right now, things that are kind of COVID proof. That's something that can really start producing some cash flow. Not to say that anything else, because of course hotels have been impacted the most, but we all know hotels will come back around. They're just sitting on pause right now. And that type of business, for me, I'm not an expert in hotels. I personally won't touch hotels because I'm not an expert in that. But if you know what you're doing, this could be a good time where you can kind of find a hotel asset at a good price, but you might have to hold on it for a little bit. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. It comes down to your personality, and your investment risk.
So I know when it comes down to hotels, there's one guy, he puts together syndicates now to buy hotels. And then I know this guy, he's in either Alabama or Tennessee, I forget which one, but he's a home builder, and he actually bought an Aloft franchise, and he built the hotel right there. And so his cost was, he was telling me his costs were like super low. Like he's a contractor, right? So he paid very low cost. But now he has an A-loft location, either Birmingham or Knoxville, Tennessee, one of the two. That's the location that he's in. So now, what I do want people to do that are listening to this, if you go follow at Funding Fuel, and I guess so you can get the updates to whenever Pedro is ready to launch. If you're looking you want to be an investor, what's that in that first round, you should definitely go follow the page and get updates. Right now, so anybody can invest in the Funding Fuel, correct?
Yeah.
And so with that, so can people bring deals to you, or you just say, put your money in, I'll decide for us, and we'll see from there what we're going to invest in?
At first, we were going to do committed capital, but the legal fees for that is much higher. So we're creating a marketplace. So basically, you could cherry pick, decide what deals you want to invest in.
Okay. Oh, you can cherry pick.
Yeah.
I know it's weird. I know. So Kamil, you ever look at Republic.co and a couple of other? So Republic.co, and there's one more where you can invest in startups, without being accredited. Right. And but now they have real estate transactions on there, right? People, like, they're raising, $500,000 for condos in Memphis. I mean, it's just crazy stuff is going on, and they're actually getting more, than the minimum amount for those raises, which is amazing. So now let me ask you this, you guys. So what can start with you, Davonne? So what can you suggest to people that actually want to get into restaurant franchising? And any pitfalls or any recommendations?
Yeah, definitely. The first thing is do your due diligence. Do your due diligence as far as educating yourself. Educate yourself as much as possible, and just everything as far as the business. If you're a chef, you understand the cooking process, but understand the business process of it as well. The restaurant business is a very, very risky business. It's like 1 out of every 5, actually stay successful after the first year of being open. That's outside the franchise business, of course. So just getting into that part, understanding just the licenses of it. I think the biggest piece about just the business aspect that I learned is understand the people part. That was always one of my biggest things. It wasn't just, the finances and things like that. I believe a lot of people, they'll grasp and they'll get some education on it, and they'll learn and go from there. But when actually running a business, just understanding the importance of people, understanding managing people. And when you're at that franchise level or that boss level, whatever level you are, understanding how to manage managers, right? Managing adults, and going from there. I think a lot of people don't highlight the most important part of the business is the people portion of it. And they get caught up a lot with the finances. So, when jumping into that, any business, not even just a restaurant business, just understand that part, understand the leadership role. And again, back to the financial piece, that's what we're talking about. Definitely, even learn just little things as far as download the beginner level for Excel, or how to put together a PowerPoint, or how to look at an actual spreadsheet, and what's your food cost? What's 3% of your food cost? Or just little things like that when you're jumping into this restaurant business and going from there. Again, the franchise tip, I know you said what's one of the benefits of actually having a franchise instead of just working up something from the ground up. I think the biggest thing, definitely, I think Pedro hit it on the nose, is standards in place. Me being with Outback, it'll be a little different if I'm not worrying about marketing. I'm not worrying about getting my commercials on TV or any real estate advertising or anything like that. That stuff is all done through Outback, which is one of the strong benefits of having a franchise. The location aspect of it, when you're actually getting one of these, a franchise or being a proprietor, the location is everything. Figure out why this person is actually leaving this franchise. Is this Papas that you want to buy in? Did he leave it because, you know, they're doing a lot of renovation, or the real estate area in that section isn't the way it is? That Popeyes that was great 5 years ago, what's going on with it? Look at the structural damage. You know, what's under those floors? You know, look at the P&L, right? Look at his P&L, bring it up. You know, how much money did this restaurant lose? Why did it lose it? Did it lose it through the labor? Did it lose it through food costs? You know, definitely do your due diligence. There's a lot of things you want to do before you just, you know, find some capital and get out here and purchase one of these franchises.
Yes. So are you guys thinking about doing any coaching as far as people that might want to go into like a similar field or even a different field, just about how to manage your franchise?
I can. Well, let me answer the first two questions before. First, first one was you know, if I was to get into a you know, a franchise, like what are the benefits of getting a franchise? I would say for me, you know, an established brand, you know, buying into an established brand, the network. Probably for me, like I wouldn't be able to do what I was able to do without the other franchisees that I get to meet at the national convention, you know, to see what they're doing and like, oh wow, that worked. Like, oh yeah, let me take that back. Let me do this, because a lot of times in our system, like, you know, it was almost like a joke. Like, you know, if you want to be successful, you know, do the exact opposite of what corporate is telling you to do. So get an opportunity to meet franchisees and see what's working for them, and then bringing it in and you know, using that. Like Pedro was talking about the systems. I mean, I'm already just a very organized person, but to then piggyback off of their organization or lack thereof, that was important and helpful in being successful. And then I would also say like internal finance, and I'm not sure if every franchise has the same cash available, but I mean, for me in my first tax season, if it wasn't for Liberty's financing, I mean, you know, the amount of money we might make in a day now, that was the amount of money for the tax season. So if I was, you know, going all around trying to get money to make it to next tax season, if Liberty didn't step up to the plate and say, here, you know, here's some financing, you know, first tax season would have been over. So those were benefits for me. Now, as far as like, if I'm going into a franchise, what would I be looking at? Well, what is the recommendation I would have is something I tell people, if they were looking at the tax business, you got to work at least one tax season in a tax store before you decide to make that decision, because it's a different animal. And I know I always say like, damn, if I could have worked in a tax store, you know, I would have had way more just, you know, knowledge of what to expect, what's going on. You know, by the time I figured out what was going on, it was April 15th. So, you know, that is it takes time, and then you got to wait a year before that opportunity comes again. But as far as like coaching and mentoring, I mean, I don't have like a system or structures put in place to do that, but I'm always open to helping other people. I mean, I didn't get here on my own. I mean, you know, me and you, we've known each other our whole lives. You know, sometimes our paths cross, sometimes they don't. But I mean, just being able to bounce ideas off of you, our network, you know, my family, you know, people in the community, just getting mentors from all over the place. So I don't mind paying that forward. But like I said, I don't have a system or a way to do that right at this moment.
I mean, I say it might not be you know, a bad income stream, right? Just do little quick consultations for people interested in doing
I thought you said no paywalls, but no, I'm messing with you.
But it is your time, though, right? It is your time. You know, so if you're gonna consult with somebody gotta pay for that time for you.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, time is money.
Listen, Kamil not moving without a check. I promise you.
Hey, I do have one question. I want to get you guys' opinion. I saw an article the other day. Should franchises or franchisees be owned by Black people be counted as Black-owned businesses?
I would say yes. I mean, like my corporation is, you know, I'm the only owner of the corporation, so I own the corporation. I mean, one of the things I've learned in business and doing business is like everything is a partnership. I mean, if I wasn't partnering with Liberty Tax, now look at my arrangement with my store leaders. I look at it more as like as a, yes, you know, employee, employer, but it's a partnership. Like everything's a partnership. So, I mean, I look at it, yes, we are Black-owned business that has partnerships with all different types of business types. I mean, we can't, you know, I spend a lot of money with Black businesses, but there's no way in our environment right now that I could just be like, all black. We just doing it all black, and that's it. Or I wouldn't be able to make it. I mean, Comcast, I need high-speed internet. You know, there's not a black resource. I mean, yeah, I can buy my cable through a black reseller, but ultimately I'm playing Comcast. So.
Yeah. I saw this article the other day, and I was a little disturbed by that article because I'm thinking, like, how can you say that? Because a franchisee, and Davonne too, you can go ahead and speak on it. You know, y'all have to take the same amount of risk as an independent, business owner. So really, anyone that takes any kind of investment risk starting a business, and you're black, you should have the label of being a black-owned business.
Yeah, absolutely. And I ran across an article like that as well. Yeah, and I agree. I definitely agree with what you said on that one. Davonne Austin didn't come up with Outback, but that particular restaurant I bought into. I brought the staff in there. I did my community work. I'm doing every single thing that the CEO of that company is doing. And getting out there in the community and doing all those other things to build my restaurant and go from there. So I definitely think franchisees should definitely get their credit.
Yeah. I just wanted to ask that question because that triggered me the other day. I'm like, how could you ask that question? Write that article. That shouldn't even be a thought.
Right.
So now, real quick, Pedro. So if people wanted to be in that VC space, what would they have to do?
Well, here's the beauty of it. The VC world is becoming more open, meaning that, for a long time, it had to be the typical makeup. And it still is this a little bit. Ivy League, MBA, Ivy League, that's the type of makeup that these firms go after. Even though I don't have any of that, I kind of got in because a Jewish man brought me in. But one way is to first educate yourself on that world. Kind of what Kamil mentioned. In essence, you can't really work from anywhere, but at least educate yourself. Read books, be familiar with what that world is, terminology, et cetera, et cetera. You definitely have to go to school. Because a lot of firms they won't hire you unless you have typically an MBA for that. But the good part is that they're opening the door up because, like I said, you used to have to go to a lot of Ivy League schools. You don't really have to do that anymore. But another way to kind of skip all that. I'm step back. Is networking. It's VC, private equity, it's still a strong network kind of community where you really can skip the line if you build a proper relationships with certain people, and it allows you to get in the door. But one way to kind of avoid all of that is that if you happen to know, you can start your own VC fund. There's no rules, regulation, or anything like that. You just need to find a couple of rich people to put in a couple of dollars. Boom, you got your VC fund. That's the nice part about it. A lot of information out there today about how to start a VC fund. I'm actually considering that now, trying to do something for Black and Brown founders to help them get more capital. But you can essentially do that today because there's a lot of information out there is really available. But long story short, it's easier than it was. Of course, if you want to work for a firm, get your MBA, and then after that, you start hitting the pavement and start building relationships, and try to do your best to get an introduction to a particular firm.
So, right, to get in. All right, so we just hit the hour mark. I didn't realize we had some questions in the chat. You better be run through real quick.
Sure.
All right, so Davonne, Uche's asking, what is TCI?
TCI is your total controllable income. So basically your bottom line, whenever you hear someone say the bottom line, basically, how much money you're bringing to the bank. So that's after your labor, after you pay all your bills, after you buy, if you're in a restaurant business, after you're buying your food, your liquor, after everything is done at the end of the month, what did you gain? What did you lose? As far as your TCI. Usually in the restaurant business, you want to reach that 10%.
All right, I know there was this one cat in Baltimore. I forget his name. I think he got like the Subway Club or something like that, where he broke it down, his expenses. He's only open on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, I think it is, or it'd be Friday, Saturday, Sundays. So open up 3 days a week, but he's making $300,000 a year on those 3 days. But the way he broke down how he's able to manage like all of his staff costs and everything, I mean, it was brilliant. He was on Earning Leisure. He did a joint. I forget the man's name, but in Baltimore. If I found that, I sent it to you guys. I got a question from Heather. She's asking about the reasonable amount to expect gains and losses first year of franchising. I think that's different. That's going to fluctuate depending on the business, and it is. Also, for Pedro, how do you locate investment groups?
You want me to go first, or?
Well, she's asking you in particular. She said, how do you locate investment groups? This is me and many I speak to have funds and want to invest in business, but have no idea where to start.
Okay. Well, my first question to you will be, Heather, if you want to invest depending on if I was actually talking to a friend today, if you're a accredited investor. If you're a accredited investor, you have a lot more opportunities, so you can involve yourself in those various groups. If you're not, then you have to rely on the Jobs Act and invest through crowdfunding portals like Fund and Fuel or WeFunder, Seed Invest, Republic, or Fundrise. You can invest through that way. But if you are accredited investor, if you are a accredited investor, you can link up with me. I'm building a small circle, but investor groups. But there are a lot of different angel groups in any local area. Philly, there's a Mag Fund. There's a lot of different ones in Mag Fund. In Philly, but there's a lot of different angel groups in every major city. If you just Google it, you'll find it. They only accept accredited investors though, but in that group, they expose you. They mainly focus on tech startups, high growth startups, but those groups, you'll be able to find a lot of deal flow where you can actually invest in.
Okay, so even for, right, if a person, so the fund that you're building yourself, right, if the person is accredited, like what's like the minimum amount that you would look for in an investor?
To be an accredited investor?
No. I'm talking about like the one, you said you're putting together a small group of.
There's no minimum. We're working on a deal by deal scenario, so there's no minimum.
Oh, so you don't raise the capital and look for the deal. You look for the deal and raise the capital for it.
Yeah. For example, another pre-COVID deal, and this was a small amount, but there's a small amount where we were going to invest in there's a lady that owns a hotel, and we were going to invest in that. And a lot of us don't have a lot of direct experience in hotels, but using syndication, her minimum to participate was 50. And that was steep for a lot of people. So to reduce the risk a little bit, we fractured it out to like 5K. So the idea is that we put in 5K into a LLC, a special purpose vehicle, and then there's a management, and probably is going to just be me being a manager member since I found the deal, and then we take the money out of LLC and put it into her deal. But there's other scenarios too. Like we had a chance to invest in Pinterest before it went public. But in that scenario, the turnaround time was too fast for us, so we weren't able to get our money together for that. But so there's no necessarily minimum. It's just more of we find a deal, and then we try to see how we can put it together. That's make it affordable for everybody, so that way no one has to cut a large check.
Okay. Is there a debt to income ratio to consider with a franchise like there is with a personal loan or a mortgage? I guess I can think, Kamil, you probably be the.
I would say at least in my background where I came from, yes, you should before you get into any franchise. I mean, you should have a good handle on your personal financial situation, your personal financial statement, know all your assets, your liabilities, your monthly income, expenses, so on and so forth. But as far as like the franchise in itself. Like when you'd be surprised, like they might want you as much as you might want them. I mean, they just may be looking to expand their footprint, and they just need people to do it, to take the risk. I mean, they got money, they just need people to drive the ship. Now, as far as like, should you feel comfortable doing it or not, or what's the actual ratio? You know, I don't know what the exact number is. It probably does differ from deal to deal, but I would just say you need to have your financial situation in order first, and then, you know, look to partner with them. And then they're going to ask you to fill out, kind of just like buying a mortgage. They will ask you to fill out a statement, listen, everything you've ever done, your current financial statements, so on and so forth. And then they'll decide if it's a good fit for them or not. But a lot of times, like I said, they're just looking for people to help them expand their footprint, especially if it's a newer franchise. Maybe the more established ones, it may be a little more difficult. You may need more upfront capital, so on and so forth. But it's going to be on a case-by-case basis.
Okay. And as one more question, then I have one, and I think that could be it. So Suleiman asks, is it better to start a LLP and have a capital raise than go the PE route?
This is probably for me. Start an LLP. I guess to help better understand that question, I gotta know what will be the purpose. My assumption is maybe you're trying to start a fund. If you are starting a fund, you could definitely use a LLP. Well, it depends on what type of fund you are starting. If it is a venture fund, typically the fund structure is like LP. But if you're trying to do the PE route is a little bit different. It's more acquisition versus minority investments. PE route, especially if you're new or you're beginning, it's better to find a deal first and create a syndicate around that, and then kind of roll up and try to leverage that to kind of create a fund around that with momentum. I hope that answers your question. Because basically, if you target the asset in a PE model, if you find the asset, it'd be better to find the investors versus saying, hey, give me money so I can find investments. It's easier to say, hey, I have this deal. Would you like to invest? Because then people can actually see and wrap their head around it. And now there is a concept where you can do that. It's called a search fund, where you can you can raise a little bit of money in the beginning, where they'll pay you to actually go out and find a company to acquire. And then once you do, you can raise more after that. I don't have a lot of direct experience in that, but I do know a guy that he's actually a black guy too, that did do that.
All right. So let me add this one question I have. I thought of a scenario, right? So I have I met a guy. He does really, really well with vending machines, right? And he has an opportunity to purchase a route that right now is not performing at all. Then they pulled the locations, right? So there's no proof, but it's 300 locations that he could put a vending machine, right? And he would want to raise about 1.2 to outfit every location, right? To get the machines and get the stock for every location, right? So for somebody like that, like that's a real scenario. So for somebody like that, how would he go about raising capital outside of the banks, you know, to get funding for that about 1.2, 1.3 million that he will need for that project?
Oh, well, he probably gonna have to figure out how to get majority of that first, because no investor is gonna give all of that. So he's gonna have to find that 70, 80. He might have to go bank. He might have to do some, especially if those are not performing. So if I understand you correct, they're not performing. So there's no income coming in. So he just wants to buy the empty units and place them in a lot of spots, right?
Right.
So my question will be, you know, why purchase that many? Why not just start with a smaller portion that's within your bandwidth, and then scale up from that? Because then that way, let's just say you buy a fraction of that 200 grand worth that you can do yourself, or even with a small group, you acquire that, you perform, do well. Now you have a track record associated, and you have momentum. Now you say, hey, I want to acquire the rest. How about you guys follow on? because a lot of raising capital is a little bit of psychology. It's just
Right.
you're dealing with just regular people and their money, and so it should try to make them feel good with momentum. So that's personally, I don't have a direct experience in vending machines, but those are some of the things I would ask off the bat.
Okay, about the minimum. So
And that's just because there's no revenue. If he was buying a route where there's income coming in, that's a different scenario.
okay. So let me ask you, do you guys have questions you want to ask one another before we get out of here?
I do have one question I want to ask Pedro real quick.
Yeah.
So like, say you're investing in a venture fund, like what's like the success rate of investing in a venture fund? I mean, it's, I don't know it, but I've heard it's not high. But and also if it is high, your capital is tied up for a period of time, like where you can't get access to it. Like, would you say that it's better to just like identify a stock that's on the up and coming, where there's more liquidity with that stock than tying your money up in a fund where you may not get access to that fund, versus like I said, the stocks or liquidity, you can take your money out whenever you want and participate.
Sure. Well, I'm gonna speak general, then I'm gonna go a little more specific. So investing in private companies versus public, right? Private, the reason why it's risky, the reason why they normally like to deal with accredited is because there's no transparency and there's no liquidity for anything, right? And you guys know too, even with your franchise, right? You can't just pull out your equity whenever you want in your business. So it's the same thing in startups. The same thing, even if you invest in a startup directly, your money is in there for a good period of time until that startup is sold, or someone comes and buys your shares out. As a general rule, I say, like, whenever you invest in a private company, you gotta have a mindset that it's gonna at least be in there for 10 years. So getting back to your question, I would say if you want to start tiptoeing, investing in startups, well, one, you can invest two ways. One, you can invest directly, and there's a lot of angel funds where you can kind of cherry pick which kind of deal you like. Or you can, like you mentioned, you can invest in a fund. But I would say depends on your personal financial portfolio, because of that risk. The other thing is too, because you can also be a limited partner in another deal structure, maybe a private equity deal structure that has a little bit more consistency of income. So I would say, I can't say whether go left or right, but I would say it is based off of what you feel you may need personally. If you want to get into stocks, by all means. Sometimes people go down the route of venture is because two reasons. One, they have some extra cash available. So in the event they lose it, they don't lose sleep over it. But they also like to invest because they feel like they can actually help the startup grow. So there's another more of a social component to it as well. So I would say it comes down to you. And keep in mind too, being a limited partner, there's different type of funds. Some, to participate, you might have to cut a check small as $25K. Some other funds might be $100K. So it really comes down to your personal bandwidth and what asset class do you feel comfortable with. But I say if you're okay financially and you want to kind of dip into something alternative, go down that way. And of course, we can always talk offline before you really cut a check into something, to that way you feel more comfortable. But I would just say take a look at, because you are right, it will at least be a 10-year hold before you get your money back, if you even get your money back.
Gotcha.
All right, if you even get your money back. I throw that out there.
All right. So listen, real quick. So Pedro, do me a favor, type in the chat your brand name for Funding Fuel. And I do want everyone here also to know that Kamil is also a masterful cryptocurrency trader, and he put together a course on how to make it happen. You want to put out there, Kamil?
The website is thecryptocraft.com. I'll put the thing in the link, because it takes you to our Facebook page, and then there's the link on the Facebook page, and I don't know the exact web address, but thecryptocraft.com, I'll put it in the notes.
All right, so yeah, do it. Put it in the notes. We're about to log out of here. People give them a chance to see it. And I do want to say this, man. Listen, I appreciate, all of you. You're all inspiring. You know, I got a lot out of this conversation, and I'm sure I'll be, calling you all back, for other stuff, and hopefully we could, do some stuff together. Right now I'm still a real estate guy. Real estate is my bread and butter. I'm expanding now into North Carolina. I just bought, 3 vacant lots down there in one town. I got a flip that I'm finishing up, and I'm looking to acquire a 20-acre parcel, and that if the township lets us put 9,000, if it's 9,000 square feet per house, it's probably going to be like 60 or 70. But if it's houses, if we go down to 5,000 square feet, we're going to push it up to like 130 houses. So, listen, anybody want to be involved in it? I can't afford to build 130 houses alone. So I'm taking all money. Anybody want to work with me? You're definitely welcome to come down and work with me and get your part of the dirt. So we're doing that due diligence now. So hopefully in the next 30 days, I'll know what's going on with that project. And I'm very transparent. So I'll let everybody know what that process is like. And like I said, so I definitely, thank you guys, and, we'll be in touch. And I just want to check real quick. So you got any more?
And while you're doing, I forgot one thing too, Kamil. One thought. If you want more exposure into the startup world, there is another asset. I wouldn't say another asset class, but you can always invest in the later stage tech companies. Earlier, I mentioned that we were trying to pull money together for Pinterest. Sometimes there are scenarios where you can buy shares into these. You got to be a accredited investor. And I'm sharing this with everybody too. You can buy shares in these pre-IPO companies that are later stage. Because basically the scenarios was happening, a lot of these early employees, they have their equity tied up in these companies, right? And they want to liquidate. The only way they can liquidate is someone comes and buy. They might want to buy a house or whatever the case may be. And some of these scenarios, you can get in, you can buy equity in these companies before they ever go to the stock exchange. Like Airbnb, like Pinterest. Well, Pinterest is already public, but there's a lot of other scenarios too. Many of them have like minimum investments of maybe 10, 25 grand. But I will say the one nice part about that, someone just put SharePost. SharePost is a good source too. You can also go through SharePost. There's another one, Equity Zen, I think. Or you can also go directly through some of the VC firms that have invested in those companies. So those are a couple options as well. And the nice part is that you can probably see liquidity a little bit sooner than an earlier stage company. That's the reason why I wanted to share that.
Yeah, okay, so, but you have to be an accredited investor to find those, to be able to, because I would definitely be interested in investing. I'm not ready to do early stage investing, right? But something like the late stage, like pre-IPO stuff. I mean, I would be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just one last thing. I know we're about to trying to wrap up, but one last. But like a lot of times when I look at the charts on the IPOs, a lot of IPOs, like as soon as they get released, because people have their they've been holding their capital for so long, like you said, 10 years or whatever. When it hits the IPO, I mean, when it hits the exchange, it's sell, because everybody's trying to get the liquidity. What in that scenario, is it better to just wait for it to wait post IPO when everybody's trying to get their money?
I'm referring to the ones that are even earlier than that.
Okay.
So you can basically buy shares even before. So sometimes pre-IPO is more of just marketing, even though a lot of them are on trajectory to go that way. But you can get into those even before they actually list. Because I agree with you that sometimes going for the standard pre-IPO at that stage is a little risky because it's heavily inflated. And actually, even investing in later stages is a little risky too, because a lot of times you don't get their financials. So that's a little bit of a risky part too, because you're like really just a small fractional owner inside this billion-dollar company. But what I was referring to is buying shares in these companies months, years before they actually go public.
Gotcha.
So not necessarily right when they're about to list, but years before, but they're just more mature. So that I was just basically saying that's an option too. There's risk to it, of course, but the one benefit is the window of liquidity is much shorter compared to investing in an earlier stage. That's the reason why I brought that up.
So what about Airbnb, right? You said they're about to list soon?
I think they were. I haven't really been following them. I think they probably were before COVID. Now they're probably just trying to stop the bleeding now.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I know. So I watch a lot of the content that Y Combinator puts out, man. Like it just is super interesting, like to see a company come from nothing to then like 4 years later get a $1 billion valuation. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
So I like to watch that Y Combinator.
Well, that's one thing too, Kamil. If you do go that LP route, definitely choose a good fund that has a good track record, because a lot of people don't know most VC funds don't get the generous returns that the media depicts. Only probably about 5% or so really makes those home runs. That's the misconception in the media. Everybody believes that these VC funds are just, swinging for the fences, having all these multi-billion-dollar valuations, and that's really just a small fraction of them actually are.
Right. So so backstage, right? So how was she able to raise capital from homeless, right, to now what she is now, to have a fund?
You said how was she able to raise money?
Right.
I don't know her whole story, but she raised a $5 million fund, and I think to participate in that fund, she had to reach out to accredited investors who invest probably a minimum of like $25K. And my guess is that she just, like any entrepreneur, you're trying to find your customer. LP, when you're doing a fund, LPs, limited partners, those are your customers. So however, the hustle tactic to finding a customer for a restaurant, for a tax business, is the same thing of trying to find an LP. So like I said, I don't know her story in detail, but my guess is that she just hustled. She did go out to California. That's where I will say West Coast, they're very generous with the checks compared to here on the East Coast. We're a little more conservative. They throw money at you on the West Coast. But she did go out that way and able to make noise, because $25K for a lot of these folks, especially some of the heavy hitters, is nothing. It's probably a weekend fun for them.
I know, but to get people to trust you, to give you money to basically support startups with zero experience, I think is very impressive.
Yeah, what she had to do to not to take up any more time, but I think she had to be creative of her compensation. Typically, a fund gets paid two ways: a management fee and a carried interest, which is around like 20% or so. From what I hear is that she had to give up a little, and the carried interest is where that's where the wealth is created. That carried interest on the back end when companies are being sold. From what I hear, I think she had to be creative on that back end, meaning that she probably had to give up a little bit of either her management fee or her carried interest in order to kind of build confidence. And I think she did have, we call this thing called a lead investor, which is basically if you can find someone that can kind of find one person to believe in your story, believe in your narrative, and they invest, it'll become easier to find the next person. And I think that's what because I think she did find one person to be her lead investor, and then she used that as her strategy to find more investors for her fund.
All right. Well, listen. Once again, we got like fourth time we out of here. So, listen. Like I said, I gotta appreciate you guys. Everyone. That easy to access. Everybody's information is on my either Facebook or my Instagram. If you have any questions, I hope they'll take them. And I want to thank everybody else for tuning in also for this hour and a half with us. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.